Welcome to the GoPROcast, where we invite business doers who are changing lives by sharing their stories, their strategies and tactics, and who bravely talk about their failures that actually led to their biggest successes. Now it's time to Go Pro with Jeremy Torisk. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are very lucky to have a friend of mine. Actually, he is in the Florida Speaker Association alongside myself because professionally speaking, we belong to one of the best organizations in the country. And so that's how I came across Paul. And Paul's written a couple books, Repeat Business, Inc., The Business of Staying in Business, that was released in 2017, along with his newest book, You Can't Make This Ship Up. And I love the name of that. It's my favorite. And it is also subtitled Business Strategy, Life Lessons, True Stories from 40 Years at Sea. And that is available everywhere. You can also find Paul. He's got his, the website at paulrutter.com and LinkedIn. Obviously, that's the place where everybody lives. That's where I love to live. Paul is an author, speaker, longtime cruise and entertainment director, working aboard some of the largest cruise ships in the world. He's a leader in customer experience, and I'll let him save that hook joke because I love it. It's one of my favorite. I'll get it out of him. But repeat business, employee engagement, customer service, and customer loyalty, and is the creator of More Than Perfect Service Model, the More Than Perfect Service Model. I want everybody to help me say hello to my friend, Paul Rutter. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Well, so I like to kind of start the show off. Wow, that was a boomer right there.
I was going to say, was that on your end or my end?
I think it was my end. It's raining here, and normally I can't hear. I'm in a pretty soundproof room. It has a huge one, big thunder boomer. But anyway, I like to start off the show by paying homage to one of my coaches, Steve Noodleberg, who has a show called Tell Me Something Good. And so why don't you do us a favor and just kind of tell us what's going good in your life this week, today, this month?
Well, I wish I had, wonderful stories to tell you about what's going good. Well, what's going good for me personally right now is that the newest book was just released, but I hate to start off with a promo like that. So I don't want to go that way. Unfortunately, the last few years during this pandemic has really shaken up a number of industries, including mine, the cruise industry, which was completely shut down in March of 2020. And it's slowly coming back, and some good things are happening. And there's probably now about 40 to 50 ships that are sailing around the world. Very heavy protocols are in place. And I'm very happy to say that there have been very few outbreaks of COVID. And the cruise industry was very good at the very beginning of the pandemic in setting what's called the Healthy Sail Panel, and looking at the situation and saying, okay, what can we do? We know our industry's been decimated, but we know we're going to come back eventually. So they got the leaders in industries from epidemiology and public health and even port services and cruise line executives and owners, and came up with, 75, 76 recommendations for the cruise industry. And so that's really good now. The more and more ships are coming back online. They're anywhere from 3 and 4 day cruises up to 7 and 14 day cruises, depending where in the world. Protocols are heavy. And so that's been really, really good news for the industry because we're slowly but surely coming back online.
So I understand. I was in Key West last week, and we were there with the mastermind, and we were right at Mallory Square where the ships come in. And so we did see a couple of ships come in, some very happy people coming off board. I don't know, off board. I know you're on board. I guess you come off board, and just enjoying life again, which has been so different. The last couple of years, it was really. I grew up down here in South Florida. I spent many days in Key West. So being down there and seeing normalcy again really did my heart well. What is pretty much your day-to-day role in the cruise industry then? I know that you. I started talking about this joke about customer experience, and we had a little funny moment once with when you were telling us about your book called "You Can't Make This Ship Up." But tell us about your experience with customer experience, and also kind of what are you doing these days in that industry?
Okay, so the cruise industry is one of the very few industries in the world where we actually live with our customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I don't know if you've taken a cruise. Uh, so let me
Negative.
ask. Negative.
No,
Okay.
no, that maybe no, not really.
Okay. So we'll have to get you on a cruise, but it's one of the very few industries where we actually live with our customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when I work with land-based businesses, that's the first question I ask them is, what if you had to live with your customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Would you treat them any differently?
Yes.
You know,
And
how
that
quickly
was
would,
the aha moment that we all were on the call. We were like, wow, imagine if we lived with our clients all the time and had to kind of be there and see them when they try to call us and we don't answer. And then we walk out of our house and they're right there on the street, on the sidewalk, basically.
that's pretty much exactly what happens. And so, how would we treat them differently? Like you say, would we answer those phone calls and answer those emails? And so it's really a very unique dynamic. So the industry has policies and procedures and even principles in place that I think land-based businesses can learn from, because they're right there with us. If we don't do what we say we're going to do, they're at the front desk in 30 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's so for instance, if we have problems on board, like any business does, if their air conditioning doesn't work or their toilet doesn't flush, they're not going to wait all weekend for us to send a repairman. They'll be lucky if they have to wait 30 minutes before we send somebody out and fix the problem and get them on their way. We've learned that customers and clients are very forgiving when there's a problem, if you fix it right away and you fix it right the first time. If something keeps breaking over and over, then you're going to lose trust. And that's what all business is about. It's building trust. It's building that relationship, because that's what we do, is we build relationships. And I always like to say that in the cruise industry, we're not in the cruise industry. We're not even in the travel industry. We're in the industry of creating memories. And that's what people buy on. They remember those memories, whether they're good or bad. They're going to remember the memories and make a decision if they want to do business with us again. And so we have a motto on board, and that is to create exceptional experiences that exceed expectations.
Alliteration,
and if we do that, and if we do that, 98% of the time, these people will book their next cruise with us, and they can do that right on board the ship. And for a very small refundable deposit, they don't have to tell us what ship or where in the world they want to go or even a date. But we know if they put a deposit down on a bed somewhere, 98% of the time they'll take their next vacation with us, because they're buying that next cruise as an impulse buy. It's an emotional decision because they're having such a great time now. Right. They know that our company is going to create that great time down the road. And so what if land-based businesses knew that 98% of the time their customers would come back to them? They don't have to spend money on marketing or advertising or customer acquisition. They're
prepay a big chunk at it too. Putting down a big chunk of it toward it. And I know that every cruise person, they're called that, right? Oh, they're a cruise person because they love that experience.
Very loyal, very loyal, and very loyal to brands, whether it's Carnival or Princess or Royal Caribbean or NCL. No matter what ship you go on, you tend to be very loyal to that brand and compare every other cruise line to those brands. And so we work very hard in establishing a reputation, whether it's food or service or onboard activities or entertainment. We want to make sure that their next vacation is with us and that they won't even think about going to the competition. And so the experience has to be seamless, and that starts when they're even thinking about taking a cruise. How easy is it to navigate our website? How easy is it to call our call center? Do they get the right information? Is it the correct information? And even if everything goes perfectly before the cruise, there could be still things that happen that upset them before the cruise. So for instance, somebody flies to Miami to get on a ship. What happens if the airline loses their luggage? Well, they're coming on a 7-day or a 14-day cruise with no luggage. How happy do you think those guests are going to be when they get to the ship. Now, a problem has been created that was not our doing, but we've now inherited that problem. We can't just say, hey, sorry, you're out of luck. Tough business. You're going to spend, the next 14 days in your clothes. We inherit that problem. So what procedures do we have in place to take care of that? And we have some great procedures where we have clothes on board. We have toiletry articles on board. We're in constant communication with the airlines. We try and get the luggage forwarded to the next port of call so that they only have to spend maybe 2 or 3 days without their own clothes. And then we'll get the luggage back. Yeah.
Like that Seinfeld episode where they just got to walk around in towels all day, right?
Exactly. And so
I wanted to unpack something though before we get too far out, because there's 2 things that you keep mentioning that kind of intrigue me. And that is, one, how do you benchmark against the other companies that if you get the chance to take somebody who was on a different cruise line and they experience yours, how do you benchmark what they do versus what you do?
Well, I think the first thing is to send somebody on their ships and experience their product. We send some of our high executives. Sometimes they're known, sometimes they're not known. And they go on and they see, what the food is like and what the activities are like and what the service. And they may even go on board sort of like secret shoppers, which is a whole business, which we deal with secret shoppers on our ships, which is fine. They cause problems on purpose to see how we will react to them. So, for instance, they might slip a bartender $20 and say, hey, can you give me a few extra pours, or, fill my glass up to the top? Well, we have policies that say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not allowed to do that. Obviously, safe drinking limits are on board, and our crew is not allowed to do that. So they'll test crew members, or they'll go to the front desk and try and see how we'll handle different situations. And I think a lot of businesses will go to the competition, just walk in the front door and, see how clean it is, how safe it is, how friendly the person is that greets them at the door. Is there a smile and a good morning to people? Those little things may not cost a lot, but they are so important in a day-to-day running of a business.
Yeah. So, and the second thing that really I was looking at is the more complicated one, which is why I'm asking a second, because I think we could spend hours on this one alone. In my opinion, the number one problem with 2022 coming up for businesses is going to be employee retention. Okay. With all the different price wars going on and trying to pay people more money. And at the end of the day, more money doesn't make a happy employee or happier employee. It's the 100 other things you can do to make them feel engaged, make them feel ownership, make them feel accountable, learning their learning styles so that the management knows how they like to be treated, learning your management's learning style so that you can treat them the way they want to be treated and still be effective, of course. But your business is so dependent on every single person doing their job at the top, rung of acceptability. So it's exceptional business, not acceptable. Whereas most companies can get away with 20-80 rule, right? But your business is much different. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's funny because at the beginning, you touched on all the key words of culture and engagement and empowerment of your employees. So the second big dynamic, not only do we live with our customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we live with our coworkers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the person that we just spent 8 hours with at the front desk or running activities or serving food or cleaning cabins with, it could be that at the end of the day, that person is our roommate. We go home and now we're sharing a bathroom and watching TV, and it's like a college dorm. Most of the crew members on board are true to a cabin, and they have their own bathroom and their own TVs and small refrigerators in their own rooms. And so what an interesting dynamic of having to live with your coworkers as well. So you all eat in the same place. There's a crew mess or a staff mess where everybody gets their food. There's a crew bar at the end of the day where all the crew members can go and get a drink at the end of the day to relax and unwind. But you're all going to the same places over and over and over again. So just like you keep running into your customers when you least expect it, you keep running into your coworkers when you least expect it. And the thing that's interesting, Jeremy, about the cruise ship is on board, Americans are the minority. So let's take for an instance, the last ship I worked on before the pandemic, one of the largest ships in the world, Spectrum of the Seas, one of the newer ships for Royal Caribbean. over 5,000 passengers on board, but 1,500 crew members. So these crew members come from close to 70 different countries. There may be 25 or 30 Americans out of 1,500 crew members. That's it. And so how do you keep these crew members from 70 different countries engaged? How do you empower them? How do you make them feel that they're part of the solution and not part of the problem? And you hit it on the head. You empower these employees. So I can give you a number of examples. So, and I don't want to run too long here.
No, please. This is what my listeners are facing. I have a lot of entrepreneurs that I'm connected with, and this is a huge problem. So your industry is for us a benchmark. Really, it should be on how to get this employee engagement deal optimized. So please, yes, I'd take all the time you like.
Okay, so we have an HR office on board our ships. And so we celebrate the different nationalities of the crew members. We make sure we go above and beyond. So for instance, you and I for breakfast may have cereal or fruit or oatmeal or bacon and eggs, and that's what we love. But somebody from the Philippines or Indonesia or China or India, they may have rice and fish and soup and meat. And we know that if people are happy where they live, their cabins are good, and their food is good, then they will work hard for us. And so we have chefs on board that are trying to prepare meals for all these different nationalities on board. So you may go into the staff mess and there's all these different sections set up. So yes, there's bacon and eggs, but there's also soup and rice and fish and meat for the people that normally have that. We try to make them feel at home. And so the second thing we'll do for the crew is we will celebrate their independence. If it's Jamaican Independence Day and we have 50 Jamaicans on board, we're going to throw a big party for the Jamaicans on the back deck with music and food and make them feel special, which makes the rest of the crew feel special. If there's Indian Independence Day, we have a lot of people from India on board, from China and the Philippines. We will go out of our way to make these people feel like they're wanted, like they're part of the solution. And the other thing we do with empowerment, it used to be in the old days of cruising, somebody would come to the front desk, let's say, as an example, and say, "Oh, I didn't enjoy the tour I went on today. It didn't do this. You said it would go here, here, and here, and it didn't." Okay. In the old days, we would say, "Okay, here's a business card. Contact our home office when you get home. Tell them the problem, and then they will take care of it for you." So what happens for the rest of the cruise? This person is annoyed with us. We haven't solved their problem. They stay annoyed. They then go home. They email the office. The office then emails the ship and says, "Okay, tell us what happened." We then spend all this time and energy writing back to the office. And you know what happens? The office ends up refunding the money. So we found out that if we empower our employees, let's say if it's under $100, we just refund the money right away. We take it away from the tour operator because we work with a reliable and trusted and vetted tour operators. And so if we find out that the tour didn't do what they said, we'll just refund the money right then and there. So how does that affect the guest? Well, the guest is much happier. They enjoy the rest of the cruise, and we've built that trust with them so that they go home and say, "You know what? I had a problem, but they took care of it right away. I'm more inclined to go back with this cruise line because I know that they'll take care of the problem."
Yeah, their value. You're building value also with this stuff, and trust, and all these things have a number, a monetized number that's assigned to them that you can easily, if you take your time, assign to these problem-solving issues, and that increases efficiency and margins, and so happiness has a price, and it is usually not that expensive at the end of the day.
And studies show that when your repeat customers come back over and over, they spend more money with you. Each time they come back, they spend more money because you've built that relationship with them. So it seems to be a no-brainer, but I see all these companies, land-based companies, spending so much money trying to get new customers that they sometimes neglect the customers they already have that really will be loyal to them if they do the things they say. All businesses are excellent when nothing goes wrong. But you really see the soul of a business when something does go wrong. Do they just ignore you and hope you'll go away? Or do they show a little compassion and empathy and try to fix the problem?
And I imagine once you fix a problem or two, in the future when they come back. If they have a few crews under their belt without problems, when another one arises, they're much easier to deal with because they know it's going to be handled, right? They're not on the warpath immediately, right? They're going to give you a chance to come through for them.
Exactly.
So how do you think, I guess the number one thing I'm thinking of is how do we get this culture into every other business? Because obviously a person who is a cruise person is still a shopper, and they buy services and goods and everywhere else when they're not on the cruise ship. So if they're that loyal, if those retention numbers and repeat numbers are that high in those people, then those people are also in the mainstream, but also every other type of person has the same tendencies if they got that level of experiences that they don't know about because they've never been on a ship. How do we get that kind of attention for the employees? Because I think that's really the root of it. You're getting these employees engaged. How do we roll that out to get these 20% of the people are happy, 10% are hurting you, the other 70 are just showing up for a paycheck?
Right.
That, if we can even double those numbers, because you sound like your numbers are through the roof with employee retention and engagement, where do you think we could start by the rest of us in the world?
Well, culture starts at the top. If you don't have
Amen.
buy-in from the
Amen.
owner, vice presidents, then it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's where it starts. And you have to spend money. People look at customer service as an expense, and it's not. Because if you prove your service is above reproach, then people will come back to you. And let me also say, Jeremy, that people don't compare industries anymore. They compare the service they're getting to any other industry that they've received great service. So for instance, let's take Zappos, online shoe retailer, that they will spend hours and hours on the phone with somebody. So a cruise person might compare the service they receive on a cruise to the service they received at Zappos, because they say, well, this person's willing to spend 10 hours on the phone with me. Why aren't you willing to spend 10 hours on the phone with me? And so service is now, and what these owners can do is they can go and try to mimic the businesses where they received excellent service. I mean, get your employees involved, have a staff meeting and say, okay, any of you, when was the last time you received great service and what was it? Get your staff involved to have them be part of the solution. And they can tell you, oh, I went to Ritz-Carlton and Ritz-Carlton treated me like a king over there. And they knew me by name and they knew what they want, what I wanted. Same thing at Nordstrom's or all of these other businesses that give great service. How can you copy what they do? Because everybody is comparing all different industries to the service that they're receiving from you. So I think it starts at the top. And if you don't get buy-in from the owners and the senior managers, then there's a lot of problems there.
So what I hear too is what I think, I kind of threaded some of the old backstory into the new story. So let's say a employee who is a customer comes to work with this great experience that they had over the weekend, and they bring it to ownership and they use their voice because they feel empowered, and they give this suggestion, and it happens to be a good one. Then what we do is celebrate that. All right. Like what you did with the cruise members who had a holiday or a reason to celebrate. So we celebrate it, we make it public, we make it a big deal. And that way everybody else can see the reward system in place for bringing there. They feel safe, and now they kind of, can bring some more ideas into it. And you're right. It does start at the very, very top. Example, leadership. There's two kind of people. There are leaders and there are bosses.
Yeah. Oh, right? And there's a big difference between the two. And we even, you say you celebrate it, you put it on social media, you let the world know about it. And we run contests on board. We have a safety suggestion every month. If a crew member, because they're on the front lines, your frontline employees know your business better than anybody. They know your customers better than anybody. So if a crew member on one of our ships sees an area that could make us safer or streamline a process, we do a monthly suggestion, and whoever wins the monthly service suggestion gets $250 just for making that suggestion if it's implemented. Right. And so people put in all these different suggestions, which are great in helping the company move forward because they're the ones that see the problems. whether, you know, in the cruise industry, it could be a stateroom attendant, somebody who cleans cabins, and they say, well, if we could clean it a lot easier if we did this, 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 and this. And if they can streamline the process that makes it safer and healthier for people, then we celebrate that as well. And yes, it goes on social media, and it's and other employees see that, and they're more inclined. They're saying, "Hey, I got an idea. I want that $250 as well."
Right. And with people walking around these days with a live wire to 100, 500, 5,000 people at any one time. Steve Noodleberg tells a great story about what happens when you walk into a Four Seasons hotel and you walk into the bathroom and there's a big hairy roach in the sink. You're on live, right? You got 7 on your side. You're live right there on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and everywhere you could think of, showing that this roach is in your room. However, when you walk into that same bathroom and everything is perfect, you don't hear about those things. So you got to be right all the time. And the one time that you're wrong, everybody knows about it faster than ever before. So the stakes have never been higher to get everything right all the time, especially in a service industry like yours.
And I agree. And studies have shown that 4% of the people will actually tell you if there's a problem. But 96% of the people will just walk away and they'll never tell you that there was a problem. They'll just go to your competition. So,
or they'll tell the world without telling you.
Twice as much as positive comments, as you just mentioned. Yes. And so they'll just walk away. So when people come to you with complaints, don't look at it as a problem. Look at it as a gift. They're giving you a gift and telling you that, hey, listen, just so you know, there's a roach in the sink in my room. You might want to take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm gonna run out of fire today. You're just dropping them left and right. That's great stuff.
Yeah, no, you have to look.
It's about perspective. It's all about perspective.
The perspective and attitude. All of attitude is everything.
So I don't ask any question for every show, but I do like to have a common thread of an experience that challenged you in the past, that maybe really rocked you for a day or two or a week or a month or a year. In some cases, maybe it has to do with the industry, because it sounds like you've been in it since right out of college, right? But something that has given you, COVID might be it for you, but something that you really didn't know. But however, because of it though, you're better off now. And that's really what I really try to preach to a lot of my clients who are young, and they just think that when the tide comes in and they're over their head, life is over. And I try to show them that tide just makes you a better swimmer. And then if you just have the right attitude, you're going to be stronger for it. So I like to share the real life stories with my clients, my listeners. You have something?
Oh, tell me a year, I'll tell you something that went wrong in the year. But there's a few stories that, if I go back to my youngest days, I was in high school. I played basketball. So, but I got cut from my high school basketball team as a senior. And that was devastating for me. I mean, I had played all those years and I just got cut as a senior. But then I went to college. I went to Boston University, and I actually made the basketball team, the freshman team at Boston University. So I got cut. And then I found out that Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team as well. And he went on to become Michael Jordan. Now,
yep. So when you got cut, did it change your attitude for when you were on the team in college? That maybe, was it a behavior or a practice or a work ethic that was the reason you got cut?
Well, I knew I'd never become Michael Jordan, that's for sure. But the work ethic, yes. I finally learned that if you put in the work and you put in the effort and don't make excuses, if you're responsible and accountable for your actions, then good things will happen. The good Lord will open up a path for you. And I won't get religious or anything like that. But if you put in, if you put in the effort, the results will be there. So that's one thing that happened when I was young. There was another thing that happened where I was working for a company that ran casinos on board the cruise ships when I first started. And we had a robbery in our warehouse one weekend. And I was the manager of that warehouse. And while I wasn't involved in the robbery, I sort of was blamed for it. It's sort of like the coach who gets fired when his players don't perform on the
Yeah.
field.
A process or a
A-
system that allowed the thing to happen, the root cause, maybe something like that.
Exactly. And so the company let me go, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me because I had a teaching degree. I went on to teach school for a few years. I actually coached basketball. I went back into the cruise industry because unfortunately I could make some more money as a working in the cruise industry than I could as a teacher. And that is very sad state of affairs.
Yes.
But getting fired from that position was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it led me on a different path and a different course. And so, again, it's all how you deal with it and what your attitude is. And going back to a previous story about customers losing luggage when they come on board the ship, we've had customers lose their luggage and come on, but they had the best attitude. They didn't care. They enjoyed themselves. It was wonderful. We also had passengers lose their luggage and had the worst attitude, and all they did was mope and complain and wanted money back for everything. So that really taught me that attitude is everything. You can lose your luggage, but still have an absolutely wonderful time.
Yeah, because it's not, you don't have to look too hard to see the difference between happy people and just miserable people. And they're all around there. And hopefully the lesson is to surround yourself with the happy ones and the people who are not dragging you down, because at work you might have to deal with people, but in your personal lives, you're never going to get to the place that you want to be by allowing people in your life who are those type of people is looking for reasons to fail. And for you to fail, absolutely, that's really even worse.
It makes them feel better when somebody else is as miserable as them.
So what's next for you? What's the future look like? This book, You Can't Make This Ship Up. What is that about? What can we expect when we crack the cover on it?
Well, when I tell people I work on a cruise ship, their first reaction is, wow, you must have some incredible stories to tell. What a great job. And the truth is, yes, I have some incredible stories to tell. And so I took the time off from the pandemic and during the pandemic to put these all put them down on paper. These are just some of the stories, but we talk about things that happen on board a cruise ship, how we handled them, and what land-based businesses can learn from them. So let me give you a few examples.
Yes.
Weddings are big business on board. And so we have lots of weddings. And so there's two types of weddings. One wedding is called an onboard wedding, where let's say the day of the cruise, the couple comes on board, their family comes on board. Let's use Miami as an example. Their friends and family come on board. The good justice of the peace or the notary comes on board. They get married that day in Miami. And then the family and friends get off and they go on their honeymoon and everything is wonderful. So that's an onboard wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The second type of wedding is called a destination wedding, where they plan their wedding on an island on the beach. Let's use Grand Cayman as an example. So Grand Cayman might be day 4 of a 7-day cruise. And where they had this one couple had family, they had friends sailing with them, and they also had friends who were actually flying to Grand Cayman, who were going to be there when the ship arrived, and then they'd get married on the beach and everybody would be there and it would be absolutely perfect. So this one couple booked their cruise on the and then they booked their wedding on the beach in Grand Cayman. There was only one problem. They booked it during hurricane season. So what happens during hurricane season? We have these little things down here in Florida called hurricanes and in the Caribbean. So what happens? Well, of course, a hurricane forms and starts heading towards Grand Cayman in the Caribbean. Well, we know about this a week in advance, and so does the couple. This is when the Weather Channel becomes everybody's favorite channel. Yes. And you being from South Florida and me living in Fort Lauderdale, we know the Weather Channel very well during hurricane season.
Yes.
But we can't do cruise ships will never go near hurricanes. The ship can handle it, but the passengers and the crew, they don't want to put anybody through a hurricane.
Yes.
So the ship bypasses.
I would pay extra for that, by the way.
We'll have to keep that in mind. And so the ship bypasses Grand Cayman. We're not going to go into bad weather. We're going to go towards the Eastern Caribbean, where there's St. Thomas and St. Martin, and there's sunny weather and there's no hurricanes. So unfortunately, this couple could not get married in Grand Cayman. The problem was that all of their friends who flew to Grand Cayman to join them, they're now stuck on the island during a hurricane because the airport has closed and nobody can get off the island.
Wow.
So we go to warm weather, sunny weather, where it's nice. The couple cannot get married and their friends are stuck on the island. So what do we do? How do we handle that? Another example where we inherit a problem, but we have to deal with it. So what we did was, and this happened twice actually. Another example was in Bermuda when we sailed out of Baltimore to Bermuda, and the same thing happened. Couple get married on the beaches of Bermuda, but hurricanes happen. So we really take care of the passengers. We empathize. We show compassion. We send them to specialty restaurants for romantic dinners. We send them to get couples massages. We send champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries to their room. And in this one particular example, we actually worked hard in order to get a justice of the peace back in Miami when the cruise returned from when the ship returned from the cruise back to Miami at the end of 7 days. We had a justice of the peace on board. We redid all the paperwork. So the couple got married on the last day of the cruise. So they actually took their honeymoon, then they got married after the honeymoon, which is a good thing if you think about it.
Great story.
And so it's stories like that where, okay, how do you deal with these? We have all these people on board, 200 people who were there for a wedding in Grand Cayman. How are we going to keep them happy? And so we ended up making this couple happy because we empathized, we showed compassion and empathy, and then we were able to arrange with the paperwork to get them married when they came back into Miami.
Wow.
And so that's one example.
And so the book is probably filled with a lot of it that can be applied to any business, right? Like extreme ownership, where they take the battlefield lessons and they apply it to business. And, Jocko Willink has made quite a living on that premise.
Yes, exactly. And just one other story that's in the book.
Please.
I talk about what happens on our clothing optional cruise. So there's lots of charters. We have lots of businesses that charter a full ship. So there's music cruises where you have jazz or pop or rock, where all these musicians come on board. We have sports cruises where we have teams come on board, professional or college teams, and their boosters and supporters. They sail with us and meet the players and all of that. But we also have other types of charters, and this was a clothing optional charter, which is very big business. So at the 12-mile limit, there's the unofficial 12-mile limit once you sail from port. We had a ship full of naked people running around the ship, having a great time, going to all the activities, sunbathing out by the pool, going to eat at the buffet. And these are all people who live this lifestyle.
Yes.
And it's packed. This is very big business. The cruise sells out in no time. They charge top dollar. There's always a waiting list. And I'm the cruise director in charge of activities and entertainment on a ship full of naked people. And I will tell you and your listeners, the first thing you learn is how to hold and maintain eye contact, because you don't want your eyes wandering all over the place. So that was the first thing I learned on the clothing optional cruise.
I imagine the staff these days with the Me Too cancel culture and thin skin. You're probably pretty lucky that your staff is so heavily weighted from other countries, and because I think if it was 100% American, you'd have a hard time having your staff just deal with those types of cruises, I bet.
Well, I should tell you that this company it's called Bare Necessities out of Texas. And this is all they do. And they have created such a niche for themselves. They really did a great job. They came on beforehand, and we let the crew know that if anybody was uncomfortable, and we have very conservative countries represented, the South Asian countries are very conservative. And so if anybody had a problem, they were able to get off the ship for that week. So we allowed them to either go to another ship that was in the area and we would replace them. But we took those feelings and those cultural norms and values into account when we booked that cruise. And so, yes, there were a few people who were uneasy. I just thought it was a joke. I just thought it was the greatest thing. I'm glad I did it. I really don't want to do it again. There were a lot of people you had wished kept their clothes on and didn't take them off. There were some people you would wish took their clothes off, but they kept them on.
Yeah, we have two topless or clothing type optional places down here, Hollover Beach and South Beach.
Right.
You'll find two very different type of clothing optional people at those two beaches.
Right. Yes. And then, you know, when we go to St. Martin, there's a clothing optional beach in St. Martin. You can always tell the passengers who went there because they have the binocular rings around their eyes as they're trying to, you know, look through their binoculars.
Yeah. And the sunbird buns.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So those are some of the stories we talk about in the book, just crazy things that happen and how businesses can learn from them.
It's been a pleasure. And I want to give you a chance to say what have you got, you know, something coming up for your for the listeners that you need any support on? How can we help you? You know, other than supporting the book, Can't Make This Ship Up, business strategies, life lessons, and true stories from 40 years at sea. What else would you need us to give you a hand on getting you over the top with something?
Well, you know, I'd love for everybody to pick up a copy. There's Kindle, there's softcover, there's hardcover. It's on Amazon as well as other books. It's being distributed by Ingram Press. So they're a big distribution company, Barnes and Nobles and things like that. If anybody wants to reach out, ask any questions, my website is paulrutterspeaks.com, paulrutterspeaks.com. My email is paul@paulrutterspeaks.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn, Facebook, Paul Rutter Speaks, YouTube, Instagram. I'm on Twitter @Real Paul Rutter. So please just reach out. And even if you just want to talk about the cruise industry, I'm actually planning on going back on board in January of 2022. I am scheduled to go back as the cruise industry gets more and more ships back online. I don't know how much longer I'll do it. Obviously, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I do. But I didn't want to end it on with the pandemic. I had gotten off a ship in February of 2020, right before the pandemic shut everything down. And so I want to go back and just experience it one more time under better circumstances. So please, everybody, come take a cruise with me.
You want to go out on a high note.
Absolutely. Very high note.
On the high seas on a high note.
Oh, there you go. Very good.
All right, my friend. We will catch up with you at the next FSA meeting. See you around the block. I appreciate you joining us today.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, that's another great episode in the books. Remember that we really value examining your whys for determining and defining your drives, and also having a mindset that is proactive instead of reactive, and building your brand by building personal relationships. Please hit me up on LinkedIn, jeremytorisk.com. Remember, my last name is spelled Torisk and my blood type is B positive. So how can I go wrong? Thank you, everybody.